again, the West Coast doesn't actually get our business that well. They don't have lawns like out here in the Midwest. So when we talk to VCs, we find the most interest out of Midwest-based firms, but we're really looking for the right partner right now.
The startup investment landscape is changing, and world-class companies are being built outside of Silicon Valley. We find them, talk with them, and discuss the upside of investing in them. Welcome to Upside. Woo!
Hello, and welcome to the Upside Podcast, where we're finding upside outside of Silicon Valley. I'm Eric Hornung. I'm accompanied by my co-host, Mr. Oh my God, I forgot a nickname himself, Jay Klaus. Jay, how's it going, man? What's going on with you?
I thought for sure you were going to go with wasabi peas. As I told you right before we got on this, that I just crammed a ton of wasabi peas into my face, and too many wasabi peas. I was in tears calling you on this for this interview.
I had a great one before, and it just blanked on me. So now you're Mr. I forgot a nickname for you because you're so memorable.
We can't all be perfect, Eric. I don't expect perfection from you. I know you're trying your best.
Oh man, well, how you doing today? How's it going? Besides crying, I think that I can literally see the tears via Skype. From the wasabi peas.
Yeah, it's sticking around. It's lingering. I'm out of milk, so I don't have the basic cure. I'm talking chemistry here. I'm talking like real basic, talking pH levels. Milk, very basic, cures the wasabi pea woes. And I'm out of milk, so I'm over here drinking some room temperature tap water, and it's just not doing the job. But we're getting through it. We're going to get through it. We're going to have a great interview today. It's going to be a
spicy interview. It's going to be spicy. It's
coming in hot.
Yeah, we're coming in hot. Well, how about you tell the audience what we're doing here? Why are we here? And what's going to be hot about this?
So Eric and I fundamentally believe that the tides are shifting, and there are incredible investment-worthy startups happening outside of Silicon Valley in the Midwest and, anywhere inside the coast. So we talk about this a lot. We talk about the startups that we're seeing and that we're finding, the deals that are happening. And we said, why not bring that to a broader audience? And so here we are. We have a podcast, and we talk to founders outside of Silicon Valley who are building businesses with upside. We're sharing that with you. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that you did a great job of that. And the way that we go about doing everything Jay just laid out is through a 3-part episode every single week. So first, Jay and I are going to talk through some of the research we did independently of each other and independently of the founder we're going to talk to in the interview, which is our second phase. And we're going to learn from the founder how good our research was, what are some of the things that we could not have found out through research, and maybe just through hearing the founder's story, the company's story, or the outlook. And then finally, we're going to debrief on all of that, crystallize our thinking in what's called a deal memo, and we'll talk about that when we get there.
It's fascinating to me, week to week as we go through this, the differences in information availability we have in looking at these companies. I'm talking from like traction to press to bios of the founders, real information disparity between companies. It's super, super interesting, but really excited about today's guest. Today we're talking to Skye Durrant. Skye is the co-founder and president of LawnGuru. In March of 2014, Skye had the idea for LawnGuru and pitched it to his business partner, Brandon Bertrang. They were doing a lawnscaping company at the time. LawnGuru provides on-demand lawn care and snow removal services for clients in Metro Detroit, Atlanta, Cleveland, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Through its mobile and web-based applications, LawnGuru connects consumers with local outdoor service providers to take care of their lawn and snow removal needs within hours of each request. It is essentially Uber for outdoor services and lawn care.
Awesome. So what are you looking forward to hearing about from Skye today in our interview?
Well, part of what's fun about this show, Skye was referred to us by another guest, Seth Miller of Rap Chat. Both of them were in batch 15 of 500 startups. And, you and I both buy into the thesis of founders help you meet other founders that you should meet. And that's going to be a really fun ongoing part of the show. So For one, I'm excited to meet Skye because Seth speaks highly of him and referred him to us. Two, I think he has experience as a Midwest founder, being from Michigan, that also saw what the ecosystem looks like in the Valley by going through 500 startups. I think that's really interesting. And this is a big idea. This is a consumer play. And fundamentally, consumer plays in this area of the country are more rare and difficult in a lot of ways, just from an ecosystem standpoint and support standpoint. So I'm interested to hear how they're doing. But I pulled up their 500 Startups demo day pitch and saw some impressive traction numbers, which I'm excited to dig into. And they're about almost 2 years old at this point. So will be interesting to see and hear where they are now. What stuck out to you?
So some things that do you have a dad? You have a dad, right?
I have a dad.
Okay. And does your dad really care about his lawn?
Yes. Yes, he does.
Okay. So my dad also cares about his lawn. And I grew up cutting the lawn and getting berated for cutting the lawn incorrectly for at least the first 5 years I did it. So I feel like lawns are such a thing that people care about and trust their landscapers when they actually have them.
It's personal.
It is very personal. Like, dads would have beers like in our backyard and like compliment my dad's lawn, or everyone talked about whose lawn was good, whose lawn was bad, who had lawns. It's just like such a weird suburban like point of pride. And the quality control aspect, I'm really curious to hear how they're handling that, or if their target customer actually cares about that.
Really interesting perspective. And I had similar questions. And so I went to the App Store and I looked at reviews. I went to Yelp and I read some reviews. And there are some mixed reviews. And I think some of that is to be expected from a consumer product that's going to be going to a lot of consumers. Anything that has reviews is going to have the bias of people are going to either review something because they had a super positive experience or a super negative experience. So we're likely not seeing the bulk of people who had just like a satisfactory experience. But that's a really interesting point. I wasn't thinking about it from such the personal aspect. I mean, you know, the phrase is when people talk about social media and how you compare yourself to other people on social media, you're comparing your backyard to someone's front lawn, which is like at a societal level, it's in us that front lawns are this manicured, pretty, best version of ourselves. I also like that. From everything I see, Skye came from being in the industry, even as a high schooler. He was mowing, he was doing lawn care services with his business partner, Brandon Bertrang. Whenever an idea like this comes around, and you know, there's a period of time where there was just the attempted Uberification of everything, right? The question to me is, why wasn't it done before? Why isn't it being done elsewhere? Is it really something where there's enough user demand to drive it? And, you know, obviously these guys think so. So I'd love to hear some of the reason and the data behind it.
I'm curious, and I don't know if you found anything to the contrary, but the last time that they were referred to as the Uber for landscaping or whatever in any articles I could find was in late 2017. So I'm wondering if they're trying to get away from that kind of catchphrase, or if they're still utilizing that, and if they're trying to get away from it, why? Because the Uber for blank is a really nice shortcut to teach people like initially what your idea is, but it also can seem a little...
Well, you're putting your brand equity in the equity of another brand.
Right.
And so you're playing second fiddle by definition by doing that. You're also assuming that people have a positive and good understanding of what Uber is. And Uber's gone through some turbulent times, so maybe you don't want to compare yourself to Uber over the last 8 to 12 months.
Of course. And I think that any company that wants to take the exact same business model of another company and apply it to a different industry needs to provide some incremental services that are different and specific to that industry from whatever that base business model is. So I'm really interested to hear what's specific or special about LawnGuru and how they cater it to that specific niche, right? Because it's a very different niche than driving a taxi cab.
Something else I want to talk to Skye about, and I'm excited to hear about, From what I can see, they've raised about $1 million of investment to this point between 500 startups and other investors. And that's been stretched over a long period of time. They have a team of 9 on the website. He said 35 in his demo day pitch. So they must be bringing in some significant revenue. What I couldn't find easily without signing up was what the cut is from LawnGuru from the services provided by the third-party lawn care providers that are local. You know, are they taking like a 3% transaction fee? Is it 10%? Is it a set dollar amount? What's the model there for them, and what does that equate out to in terms of revenue? Because it must be offsetting their costs quite a bit, and maybe a case where they're doing so well that they're not actively raising right now.
Yeah, and I'm really curious as well, because 2 years and $1.1 million to build out an infrastructure in something like 7 or 8 cities seems a little light. But if they're doing it and they are making money while they're doing it, then that's awesome. It's actually really funny because we have started to converge a lot on our research, where you pull up something that I'm like, oh, that was one of my like key points that I wanted to. So we're starting to know the same thing, which is really interesting as this podcast continues to grow. Looking back at LawnGuru, their expansion strategy going forward is really interesting to me. When we think about, do they need to raise, and can they grow slowly through operating leverage, or if they raise, can they jump from 7 or 8 markets to 70 or 80 in the next 2 years? So that's a point that I'm interested in hearing about. What is their expansion strategy?
Yeah, same. I would assume that from a pure technical moat, we've talking a lot about moats lately. This seems like something that if they did try to grow slowly, but if it was picking up steam in 6 or 7 states and someone saw that they could pick off 6 or 7 other states and start there and create a little bit of a war chest and try to move faster. I mean, that's why these sharing economy startups do raise so much money and grow so quickly, is because the advantage is just breadth and capturing the market as fast as you can. So interested to hear what he has to say.
And I have one more point on that expansion strategy and capturing a market. Is the target customer businesses, and I mean, it's a marketplace, right? So they obviously have the landscaping company on one side, but on the other side, is it my dad in suburban Westlake, Ohio, or is it parish churches and schools and all these other things that need landscaping services that don't want to have to deal with hiring a landscaper and just want to be able to submit recommendations? So there's more institutional side, and then there's residential. And I'm curious if they're going more of to go back to Uber, the Uber black car model first, where they roll out a ton of institutions and then get into the residential or the Uber X space. So I'm really curious to see what that kind of breakdown is of their one half of their marketplace.
Good questions. All right, you ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
All right, Skye, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys.
I saw that you had a degree in neuroscience from the University of Colorado Boulder. Could you give us a little bit of a background on you and where you've come from, how you've gotten to be here where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Skye Durrant. I'm the president and co-founder of LawnGuru. Grew up in South Lyon, Michigan, and actually met my co-founder Brandon in the 6th grade. So I've been friends with Brandon and partners with Brandon going way, way back. Went to school out in Colorado, studied psych neuroscience. You know, Brandon and I have always kind of shared this passion for entrepreneurship. And so while he was going to school, Michigan State, he was studying finance. I was studying out in Colorado, but we'd have conversations every week, every 2 weeks about different ideas and startups we were thinking about. And we just kind of always shared this bond and this spirit of entrepreneurship. And in high school, we had actually started our lawn care company together. So we were cutting lawns back in high school. And then when we graduated, we were both kind of going down our different fields. I had moved out to San Francisco. I was seeking a job in tech. Brandon was doing a finance role here in Michigan. And I came back over Christmas break and we started talking about this industry, the lawn care industry, and the opportunities that we saw with it. And a few months after that, I decided to move back and partner with Brandon again. And we kind of started chasing this dream for building a new space in the outdoor service industry.
So I want to touch on the business that you guys started in high school a little bit. One of my biggest insecurities personally is that I don't have like this childhood entrepreneurial story. I didn't realize that was even an option that I had until I got to college. What was your realization? What was your moment to realize that you could do your own thing, show agency, and like make money as a high school kid?
Yeah, I'd say that Brandon led that. So his story starts with his bike getting run over by his dad. He left his bike in the driveway. His dad's backing out to go to work or something, runs over his bike, and his dad goes, "Hey man, you left your bike in a stupid spot. You gotta find the money to get it fixed or to get a new bike." And he was like, "Okay, well, how do I do that? I can't, I'm 12 years old or something. What do I do?" And so he got a lawnmower and he started cutting lawns. So Brandon really was cutting lawns way before I ever did. I was cutting my parents' lawn, but Brandon was going door to door before he had a car, before he could drive, cutting lawns in his neighborhood. In high school, we actually partnered because I'm a year older than Brandon. So I had my driver's license. I could actually drive and expand outside the neighborhood. Before, if Brandon wanted to get additional clients, he had to get his mom or his dad on board to actually bring them there. So, that didn't work out too well. They weren't trying to drive around their son and wait for him to finish cutting a lawn. So I came on with Brandon, and in the early days, it was, we were just super scrappy. We'd go door to door. We'd drop off flyers in the spring. We'd try and pick up as many customers as we could. Our favorite customers were the ones who'd leave cash under the doormat. It was just a way to have a little spending money, put gas in the car, and be able to, have a little fun on the weekend. So
how much were you making? How much were you making at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old? I know it's not like that, but I'm just curious.
I can't even remember the dollar amount. Our total client list was we probably had around 25 or 30 lawns at that time. And so average lawn was around $30. So $900 a week or something between the two of us. It was like that,
That's so many PlayStation 2 games.
I know. I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah. It was what did I spend my money on? It was Qdoba. I was getting burritos. I remember when the first Qdoba opened up out here. I was so excited about it. It's just weird, it's just getting lunch and stuff like that.
Yeah, but a lot of people didn't have that luxury to go get Qdoba, a couple times a week if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So what was the moment that you guys said, okay, we're cutting lawns. We think there's an opportunity to add a technology layer to this. Can you talk about that?
So in 2013, when we decided to partner again, we actually had a different model, and it was more of a franchise model. And what we did was we standardized pricing. We added technology, but it wasn't custom-built technology. It was just using third-party solutions. So we integrated a CRM system, and this was with our legacy business. So it wasn't what LawnGuru is today. It was more of a traditional lawn and landscape business. Through these kind of third-party integrations and using satellite image to map out lawns and give prices over the phone instead of going to give quotes, we were able to grow really quickly. So in 2013, the company had done 250. The next year we did 700K. The year after that, we were up to 2 million. So we were kind of doubling or over doubling the company each year just in Michigan, just through kind of introducing these efficiencies through technology and really focusing on the core business and route optimization and building density in neighborhoods and get word of mouth and that sort of stuff. And what we realized during this time was that there's a lot of pain points that customers experience that we could improve through kind of a custom solution. And there was a lot of pain points that we were experiencing as owner-operators, well, not operators anymore, but as owners running multiple crews that we could really improve upon with some technology. And nothing out there really existed at the time for what we wanted to do. So that was the impetus to seeking out, designing, and building the LawnGuru platform.
Did you say you were using satellite imaging to put quotes out there?
Yeah, so traditionally a lot of guys, if you want to get a price for your lawn, you're going to try and get one of these guys on the phone. They're going to arrange a time to come out. They're going to walk the property, and then they're going to shoot off a number. And it's going to be, arbitrary based off what they're estimating and what they're doing for clients nearby. What we did was we used Google Maps and a tracing feature to actually trace out the square footage of a lawn, and then we had a pricing matrix, and we just apply that square footage to our pricing matrix and be able to deliver a quote over the phone.
It's really cool.
So for you to introduce that service to the Michigan markets that you were in, did that hurt any other parties in that circumstance? By doing that and by growing your business so quickly, who was suffering? Was it the inefficient businesses that were going and still trying to do things by walking the yard and quoting things offhand, or was there no loss in that sort of change?
this industry is so fragmented. I don't think we were affecting anyone on a direct level at this stage, or at that level at that time. We were definitely picking up clients from other service providers, and we actually started buying out smaller operations. And one of the biggest things customer would thank us about was just standardized invoicing. So this industry, a lot of these guys are owner operators, and if you think about the responsibilities that these guys have to, I mean, in addition to doing the work, actually physically cutting the lawns, they're also their marketing team, their invoicing and back-end operations team. They're doing everything, maintenance, sharpening blades, and so their time gets spread really thin. It means that they can't do everything as well as they'd like to. So when we buy out clients from other businesses, one of the things we got thanked for the most and what customers were most excited about was just being able to pay their invoices online, to view an itemized invoice each month, just simple stuff like that, which hadn't really been introduced on, this industry was kind of lagging in terms of customer expectations and what was actually being delivered 2 or 3 years ago.
You mentioned that the industry is fragmented. Do you have any kind of metrics behind that for the audience that we can get kind of a sense of how fragmented this industry is?
Yeah. So in the US, registered lawn and landscape companies 2 years ago was around 400,000 registered, and they estimate it's closer to about 700,000 with all the unregistered guys out there. And of those, about 70% are owner operators, meaning that it's 1, 2, maybe 3-man operations just kind of rolling around in a single truck.
And at the end of the day, these people are making their money by going out onto the grounds and doing the work. So you guys were introducing these efficiencies to get them just more time out doing the work that actually paid.
Yeah. So we've always been focused on improving the businesses for owner operators. Our platform's really directed to the smaller operations. Generally, if the guys are operating 2, 3, 4, 5 crews, we're probably not going to be the best solution for them because they've probably figured out the pain points that we're solving already. We're going after the smaller guys, and we're focusing on efficiency in terms of billing, cash flow. So these guys are paid. Actually, the payments are captured the same day that they complete the job, and the money's in their bank 2 days after that. We're focusing on route efficiency, so we're giving them jobs in the routes or close to the routes that they're already working in. It's really just optimizing and growing these guys' businesses and improving their cash flow.
So I just want to make sure we're all kind of understanding on the timeline here. It started with this partnership that was doing $250,000 in its first year or so, and kind of grew into almost this private equity roll-up / franchise strategy where you were introducing efficiencies into the model, buying out smaller competitors, and growing up to this $2 million per year business. And then there was some sort of light switch or click that you pivoted almost, or evolved, however you want to look at it, into this Uber for landscaping, which is what everyone's calling you on the articles that I've researched. Is that a fair representation of the timeline? And
yeah, and because we still operate, so Brendan and I own 2 companies, and they operate independently now. But there was kind of this gray transition period where it's like, okay, we have LawnGuru, and then we have LawnGuru the app, and they were developed side by side. But in 2015 is when we officially launched the app. All lawn-related services were moved over to the app, and then all landscaping, design, build services were moved over to our other business, which is Ventures Design and Build.
And you still own those 2 companies, or did you sell them off to someone else in the space?
We still own both those companies, okay. Yeah.
Super interesting. So what I'm hearing from you is that you think of your customer predominantly as the owner-operator and not as the individual who needs their lawn mowed. Is that accurate?
We're in a marketplace, and so it's really both sides. But we focused on making these guys as good as possible because we know if we can own supply and improve supply, then we can get customers. And so we really focus on helping these guys become better at doing their business. And if we can do that, we know that we can win them more customers.
And for your marketplace, are you finding that customer demand is driving adding suppliers to your marketplace, or are you guys working through the owner operators first to help to use them to start pushing the LawnGuru as a service?
It kind of depends on the maturity of the market that we're in. So, for instance, in Michigan right now, where we've been here for a number of years, we've got a waiting list of providers to come onto the platform because we don't want to oversaturate our platform where no one guy is really benefiting from it. We really want these guys to have a direct impact on their business by joining. And so what that allows us to do is really ramp up our quality. So now we have set standards that these guys have to meet. If they're not meeting them, they get bumped, they get a warning, then they'll get removed from the platform, and we bring in a new guy to try it out. So once the market's mature, supply, we don't really have to spend anything on bringing in supply because we've built up a reputation. In the early days of a market, that's when we're taking a shotgun approach. We're saying, hey, come on, try it out. If it works out for you, great. If it doesn't, it's free to join. You're not going to lose anything. And that's where, the earliest days are when it's the most challenging, when you're trying to get a market up and rolling.
What are some of those kind of quality control standards that you guys put in place? Because I know this is a pretty emotional area. Jay and I were talking about how dads love their lawns for a lot of people. So what are some of the quality control standards you guys have in place to make sure that these owner operators are complying?
Yeah, so right off the bat, if you're going to become a LawnGuru provider, you're going to have to carry commercial grade liability insurance. You're going to have commercial equipment for the cutting. We also want you to have a kind of upkept appearance in terms of the truck you're rolling around with, the overall branding that you're using. So we want that right off the bat. Then once you're actually on the platform, every time you complete a job, the customer is going to rate you on what their experience was like. If they rate under 3 stars, we ask, or if they rate 3 or below, we ask what was wrong, and we measure communication, quality of work, timing, responsiveness. Those are the 4 that I can think of. I think there's 1 or 2 more that I'm forgetting right now. But we track and measure all those. So it's really about the customer satisfaction, and then if there's issues, what part of that experience kind of did the provider fall back on?
So getting customers to your app, once they're in, they have a really good sense of how validated a certain provider is that's going to come out to them in terms of those stars. But getting them to the app, the iTunes store and Yelp kind of are the 2 that I saw in doing some initial searching. Is there anything that you guys are looking at in those spaces in terms of reviews?
Oh, yeah. We also have Google reviews. We have all of our internal. So our internal reviews aren't publicly published unless you're actually looking at the star rating for a provider. But then if you're looking on our website, you'll see all the reviews. So if you dive into, for instance, well, we're not in Columbus, but if you were to dive into Cleveland market, you'd be able to see the top providers in the Cleveland market, and then you'd be able to see all the reviews for those top guys. And then we're actually, this summer, we're releasing our provider web pages where you can actually start reading bios on these guys and learn a little bit more about the individual providers themselves.
While we're on this topic, let's say that I'm Eric's dad and I love my lawn and I'm going into LawnGuru. What's my user experience? Can you walk me through my experience with the product, getting someone out to cut my yard?
Yeah, so is Eric's dad, is he someone who cuts his lawn already, or is he a guy who's looking for a service provider?
He uses our next door neighbor for free.
Okay. So he's going to be a tough sell already. But what he's going to be looking at in terms of the onboarding experience is, first thing is entering your address. If you're doing it through the app, we're going to bring up a satellite image and you're going to be able to trace out your lawn. From there, you'll be able to choose your service. So if you want to do mowing, you can choose a one-time cut, which just means, hey, we're going to have a guy come out and cut your lawn within 48 hours. You can choose recurring service, and for that, you can choose weekly or bi-weekly cuts, or in some markets, we even offer monthly cuts. And from there, you're going to get paired with a service provider. They're going to notify you of the service day that they're going to be coming out on if it's recurring. So it'll be weekly Thursdays, something like that. When the provider's actually on their way, you're going to get a notification that we'll call him John. John's coming out to mow your lawn. You're going to get a notification when he starts, and then you're going to get a notification once he's finished with a picture receipt. So that's what the first cut's going to look like.
And you guys offer a pretty wide range of services at this point. I think I counted 11 on the website. Is that because the owner-operators you have offer those themselves too? So it's just an easy and we offer this too because it's the same people? Or do you have to look at each of those opportunities individually and see if they made sense the same way that lawn mowing did?
Through our network, obviously, we can fulfill all of those different services. On an individual provider level, they don't necessarily all perform each one of those services. For instance, aeration is something that requires a kind of specialized tool. Some of the guys own that tool. Other guys will rent that tool if they can stack up a bunch of aeration jobs and kind of knock them all out in 1 or 2 days. But for the most part, all these guys are doing things like yard cleanup. They're all do mulch installations. So there's a wide spectrum of jobs there that everyone performs, and then there's some kind of specialty jobs that only a handful of our providers in each market perform. But yeah, it's all based off of customer demand. So those are the most popular services that over the years customers have reached out saying, hey, we love John cutting our lawn, but we want him to install some mulch this week. Can you do that?
And how does snow plowing play into all of this?
Snow plowing, obviously, it's only in our northern markets, but it works in a very similar fashion to how our on-demand lawn works, just on a tighter time scale. So when it snows, we've got 2 options. You can sign up for what we're calling auto plow, which is basically our recurring service, meaning that anytime it snows 2 or more inches, we're automatically going to dispatch a guy out to your property and have him clear your driveway, shovel your sidewalks if you request that. We also offer salting as well. And then we have our on-demand aspect where if it's snowing and, you just don't feel like going out today and clearing it, you can push a button and have a guy come, and that's within a 24-hour window. Most of our jobs are getting completed within 6 to 8 hours on the on-demand side. Some of them, depending on where you are and where the provider is, sometimes it's 15 minutes.
As the owner-operator, I think the value prop is really compelling. I've seen some numbers like on average, these guys make $400 to $700 more a week. I think those numbers I saw. Is that close?
Yeah, our average is $700. So it depends on what time of the year you're looking at. But for lawn mowing, our average is $700 a week. For snow plowing, we had guys who were doing $3,000 in a day. So it really depends on how eager you are, how much room you have in your existing routes to kind of fill up with these jobs. But there's some guys out there who last year brought in an additional $90,000 from the platform. So it's really making a big difference to these guys' lives.
And so are they insisting that their customers go through this platform? Or are they turning away some of the more traditional, like people just call them up and try to arrange these services? Where do you see like that trend going?
A lot of these guys just kind of stop doing their own marketing. So if they have customers who are reaching out to them and saying, hey, we want you to cut our lawn this year. Yeah, they'll bring them on. Sometimes they'll add them to the LawnGuru platform. Providers can bring their clients into our platform so that they have all the additional benefits of it, like the fast payments and the in-app communication and skip features and those sort of things. But a lot of these guys have just relied on us to build their routes because we deliver jobs that are right in their existing routes, and they can easily build up this density, and they don't have to do the traditional knocking on doors, handing out flyers, going door to door to build those businesses anymore.
And so from the consumer side, what's the core problem that you're solving for that person? Is it saving money? Is it convenience? What's driving the trend towards I want to go to an app for this versus I as the consumer just want to call and work one-on-one with a company?
So for the consumer, we really focus on 3 things. That's transparency, control, and convenience. So on transparency, it's pricing. We give these guys a satellite image. We're saying, hey, this is your lawn. This is how big your lawn is. And because your lawn is this big, this is how much it should cost. And that's standard across this region. Where a lot of these customers, depending on the neighborhood that they're in, affluent neighborhoods where, it's a $600,000-$700,000 home, lawn care guys traditionally kind of gouge those. So where they may be cutting a 6,000 square foot lawn across the street for $20, they're charging these people $40. So by standardizing pricing and making that transparent, it's a better experience for the customer. Then we give them control. So we like to describe our app as a remote control for your lawn. And the truth is lawns don't need to be cut every week, but because it's simple for providers, that's generally what most customers sign up for. And then they'll have guys coming out in July and they'll pretty much just be running over grass that doesn't need to be cut, and they'll be charged for it. So we allow customers to push a button to skip cuts that they don't need. And what we found is that if you're really savvy and your lawn isn't over fertilized or over water, you can on average save about 30% through skipping unneeded cuts in the middle of the summer. So that's a savings and control feature. And then convenience. We handle all the payments. You're not getting invoices on sticky notes, on your windows or in your mailbox at the end of the month. You don't have to, write a check or hide cash underneath the doormat. You're just automatically charged after the job's completed.
That's great. And so last question on this point is, how aware are the customers of their needs for transparency, control, and convenience? Because they have to be aware that those are problems they're feeling, right? How painfully do they feel that problem, or how painfully do they want a better solution for that? Or is it an education effort from you guys to say, hey, there's a better way?
It is an education effort, but it just fits so easily. It's something that once you explain to a customer, they're just like, yeah, that makes sense. And so when we get these, we sell to customers in a traditional sense where if they call us up, we'll explain the benefits, we'll explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then we'll close the sale. And every time, so we actually found this when during that transition period, when we were still having customers call into our old business looking to sign up, we were pitching the alternative. And 99% of the time they said, yeah, let's do the app. That just makes sense. And that's when we knew that we were onto something, because nobody's going to say, hey, I don't want a button to skip. Everyone knows that in the middle of the summer, they don't always need their lawn cut. No one wants to get a bill at the end of the month. They'd rather just pay per cut. It's kind of a no-brainer for the customers. There is a little bit of an education, but I wouldn't really say it's education. It's more just saying, hey, there's a better way of doing it, and it makes sense.
What percentage of the customers on the platform are residential versus like institutional? So that can be maybe like rec centers or parks or schools or people that are like much larger presences.
I don't know the exact percentage, but I'd say it's over 98% residential. We're almost exclusively residential. Our commercial properties, or commercial customers, I should say, are primarily property management companies where the work is still on a residential property. It's just a commercial owner. We do have a handful of gas stations and that sort of thing, which are privately owned. Again, it's commercial, but it's almost all homeowners at this point.
And how are you getting in front of those people? So this is awareness. I become aware. I'm like, oh, that's definitely the smarter way to do that. What are your guys' marketing or customer acquisition strategies that you're getting in front of these people?
Yeah, so in terms of paid, we're using the traditional ones, so Facebook, Instagram, AdWords. We're getting in front of customers in those ways. We also buy leads from different aggregates. So there's things like Home Advisor, Thumbtack that'll actually pipe you in leads for customers that land on their pages. We have our referral program where it's give 15, get 15, similar to everything that Uber and Lyft were doing. We're also releasing this new Hoods feature, which we're really excited about. And Hoods is basically neighborhood discounts simplified. So before, we would get requests from HOA presidents being like, hey, I've got 10 customers. I'm trying to get everyone, or 10 neighbors. I'm trying to get everyone on the same day. What kind of discount can you do for us? We've made that automatic now. So if we set up geofences around high density neighborhoods. When you enter in your property, we know you're in that neighborhood and we can display your discount rate instantly for you now.
So what's like a average cost of acquisition?
Yeah, in our paid channels, we're right around $45 when we're entering a market. First, year one, month one, it's around $45. At peak maturity, which we consider our Detroit market, it's as low as $15 through our paid channels.
And how long is a customer staying on?
Right now, our year-over-year retention is over 90%. We've been doing this for 3 going on 4 years, and that's what it's been. So it's pretty good. I don't know when they're going to,
awesome,
if there's going to be a day where they're just going to say, okay, we're done here, but it hasn't happened yet.
So something that Eric and I talked about in the intro was you guys went through 500 startups. One, I'd love to hear about that experience, but you've raised something like $1 million at this point, and it seems obvious that you guys are doing fairly significant revenue. Are you guys in a position where you're no longer in the need to fundraise?
So we're fortunate in the sense that we don't need to fundraise. The business isn't going to go anywhere. I'll put it that way. We view capital as purely an accelerant now, and we're looking for the right investors who share our vision and can add dollars in a way that's more than just dollars. So we're talking with strategics. We're talking with big players in this space. We're really looking at, again, the West Coast doesn't actually get our business that well. They don't have lawns like out here in the Midwest. So when we talk to VCs, we find the most interest out of Midwest-based firms. But we're really looking for the right partner right now. So yes, we're fundraising, but if we don't fundraise in a year or 2 years or 3 years, the business is still going to be healthy and growing.
So then my question is, what is your expansion strategy? How do you guys move quickly state to state, or how important is that to you? How big is the region that you want to attack? Is it the Midwest? Is it the whole country?
Right now we're focused on going deep in our existing markets because that's our best ROI. once you've actually established a market, then so the hardest part of any marketplace is opening up a new market. That's when your churn is going to be the highest. That's when the customer experience is going to be the worst. That's when providers are going to be the most frustrated as you're trying to get that ball rolling. Once that ball's rolling, everything just gets so much easier. So now that we really have 7 balls across the country, we're just trying to make these balls as big as possible. That's terrible. Okay. All right.
That'll be the clip that we play at the beginning of the episode.
I'm sorry. Anyways, yeah, we're going deep in our existing markets because financially it's the best return right now.
So what?
But then I'll extend on that a little bit. Within that, we track what our CAC is, right? So we anticipate that at some point, yes, we are going to hit saturation where it's going to cost more to acquire a company or a customer in our existing market than it would be to go spawn a new market. So once we kind of hit those benchmarks, and that's what we're looking for, that's when we're like, okay, let's start expanding outside these walls.
Who are your competitors? And is there anybody who's focused on starting other markets right now and trying to just do the land grab approach? Because I would think that would be a threat or something you guys have certainly thought about and considered.
I'd say our biggest competitor in terms of dollars raised is a company called Task Easy out of Utah. Then there's a handful of other guys. Plows and Mows is one, Lawn Starter, Lawn Love. These are all guys who are doing similar things to us. And most of these guys have taken the niche, or there's also Green Pal. Most of these guys have taken the land grab approach where they're opening up markets all the time, going everywhere. And what we found is that in the markets that these guys are in, that we're in, which is just about everyone now, we're pulling providers from them all the time. And providers are saying, yes, your guys' platform is the best. You deliver the best jobs in areas that I'm already working on. I can grow my business easily through you guys. We like your features better. And in return, customers are having a better experience too, because we've got the providers that are there working and we're focused on density and efficiency instead of just trying to be everywhere at once. And I imagine our CAC numbers are probably better than these guys too, but that's just based off of what we've seen. So maybe they've got some secret sauce I don't know about.
Within the markets that you're currently operating in, what are the biggest areas for expansion right now?
Our penetration rates in all of our markets are easily below 1% right now. The industry is so big. That's one thing we haven't talked about. Just in lawn mowing, it's estimated $30 billion a year in the United States. Once you start factoring all the additional services, outdoor services, they're saying over 70 billion and growing to 100 billion by 2022 or something like that. So this is just a massive industry, and our penetration rates are nowhere near what they could be. So all of our markets have huge opportunity. I'd say our best markets right now where we're growing the quickest, the top 3 are going to be Detroit, Houston, and Atlanta.
What expands the lawn mowing or outdoor services market to over 100 billion by 2022? We're not creating more lawns, right?
We're not creating more lawns, but more people are outsourcing the work or looking to hire the work. So they're estimating that I think it was like a 3.4 compounded annual growth rate or something like that. So there's a lot more people who are just looking at hiring this work than doing it themselves.
And that sounds like an industry trend to me. So that's something to say that people are just trending towards convenience. Do you think? What's driving that?
I think that people are getting busier. People are spending more time at work. The time that they do have with their families at home, they don't want to be, cutting the lawn or plowing the driveway or installing mulch. I think overall, just there's more people working. There's more double income families out there. They view this as kind of a dirty job. It's hot. It's sweaty. If you're actually doing weed whipping, that sort of stuff, it kind of sucks because you're getting blasted with rocks and grass clippings, and it can be a dirty job. So.
Is there any seasonality in your guys' revenues? I know that you hedged winter with the snow plowing, but in either spring or summer or fall, is there any noticeable seasonality?
Absolutely. Seasonality is huge. So we really view our business, like our anchor business is lawn mowing because that's the longest recurring aspect of our business. So we try and land the customers on that service, and then we upsell them basically any outdoor service they need after that. But yeah, if you look at our actual revenue, things really start ramping up April, continue climbing through July. At July, that's where most people have kind of found a solution. if they're looking to hire one. So things kind of start plateauing around there. And then the recurring aspect is going to start dipping in October. In our southern markets, it's November, December when things really slow down. But in the spring and fall, there's also a handful of additional services that lots of people order. So leaf cleanup or yard cleanup, sprinkler startup or sprinkler winterization, aeration and overseeding are popular during those times because that's what's best for the lawn. It never goes to zero, but there are months where it drops down. And then in the snows, just kind of when it snows, there's huge spikes. But if it doesn't snow, there's nothing. So
this has been a nice year then, because it's been snowing.
this year's been crazy. Yeah, it's been very, very unusual compared to the prior years, but it's been a lot of fun for us.
Can you hit me with a volume number? How many transactions, as you call them, or services are being run through LawnGuru on a weekly, daily basis?
Weekly, we're doing thousands of lawns in each of our markets. And then like for snow, it's several thousand lawns or several thousand driveways during every storm.
I was going to say, what's that growth been like for you guys?
It's been really exciting. I'd say snow is the biggest challenge because it's kind of an all or nothing event. And so you've got this, you see it coming and you're doing all the marketing. Like it's very easy to market and target towards customers when there's a big snow event on the horizon. And so you build up all these purchases and everyone's ready. And then the snow starts and then it stops and everyone wants their driveway cleared at the exact same time. And that's when it becomes really painful and you're trying to, you're doing your best to meet everyone's expectations. And some people are going to be thrilled with it. Other people are going to say, hey, this is taking too long. I was expecting this to be like an Uber where I push a button and they're there in 10 minutes. So that's a challenge. For the lawn stuff, it's really nice because we give these guys the flexibility to really build their own routes. And so from an efficiency standpoint, these guys are taking jobs and they're saying, okay, hey, this is next to my job on Tuesday or my route on Wednesday or whatever. And they plug it in. The customer is getting notified. The customer doesn't have that same kind of immediate expectation that they do with snow. It's not like you need to, if your lawn's not cut on the same day that you expected it to be cut, it's fine, right? Like it's grown another eighth of an inch maybe over the course of the day. No one's really going to be that fussed about it. So lawn's pretty easy. Snow's the more challenging aspect of our growth.
Jay, I want to pivot over to questions about 500 startups and the difference between San Francisco and Michigan. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask before we do that?
Yep, right there with you. I had one more question. I was just going to ask Skye, how big is your team at this point?
We're at 11, including our interns, we're at 11 people right now.
And do you have like a marketing whiz who's really good at these campaigns?
So last year we were working with a marketing company and they were great. It was a company out of Detroit called Marketing Supply Co. And they basically taught us everything that we need to know to do it on our own. And that's what we wanted. So marketing's still in-house, but we received some awesome insight on how to set up our campaigns on Instagram and Facebook and what we should be really tracking in terms of our email open rates and click-through rates and setting goals and benchmarks there. So yeah, right now it's all in-house, but we worked with a partner to get to where we are.
I don't know if this is a Midwest thing or an everywhere thing, but I so rarely find people who are exceptional at executing marketing campaigns and understanding how to do those ad spends and getting down that CAC really low and optimizing across the different platforms of Facebook, Instagram, AdWords, knowing how to do email and measure email properly. I still meet a ton of people who do that. So I was interested to hear, this seems like a huge strategy for you guys in terms of acquisition. I was interested to hear how that's been for you guys and if you had like a secret person in-house or if it was an agency.
Actually, this is kind of a good segue into 500, but one of the core things that they taught us there is marketing is an experiment and you always have to treat it as an experiment. So we take a really scientific approach to it and it's all just about knowing our benchmarks, measuring our, setting goals, measuring against that and just being open to experimenting and trying new things and kind of having a line of, okay, yes, that worked, that didn't work. And if it didn't work, let's forget it and let's, move on to something else and try and always uphold these standards.
What percentage of your team is focused on marketing of those 11 people?
I'd say everyone in our team is focused on marketing to a certain extent. We collaborate on ideas day in and day out. A lot of our marketing is directly driven through the things that we're tracking and then what we're hearing over the phones. We're always asking customers and providers how they heard about us, learning about channels that we haven't explored and then trying to optimize those and introduce new channels. So it's really a collaborative process across the entire team. And we're always just looking for new solutions and trying to set new experiments.
Do you have someone who's dedicated to the tech and like tech updates, or how does that work?
Yeah, so our development team, we've got, our Android, our iOS, and then our web developers and a handful of interns. But those guys, because they're also setting up the tracking applications within those, they've got insights that some of us don't also have in terms of where they're seeing downloads coming from or what pages aren't working or are working. So those guys have really good insight too in terms of marketing.
So I'm interested to hear, having gone through 500 startups, what are some of the things you learned there that are contrarian to the way of thinking here in the Midwest? What did you take out there that is different from what people around here are doing or how they're thinking, and how has that affected your business?
Different from the Midwest. I don't know if there's anything that struck me as like, whoa, this is way different than how we're thinking about things here in the Midwest. I mean, one of the biggest shockers out there is just the cost around everything, and why we came back to Michigan is because the amount that they're spending, the amount that companies have to raise out there just to keep the doors open, not even for growth. I mean, I'm just talking about rent and employees and everything else is just so much drastically higher that when we went out there and we said, okay, we can last a year with this in the Bay Area, or we can go back to Michigan and we may never have to raise again because we can dump it all into growth basically. And so that's the biggest thing. And that's why we were like, what are we doing out here? This place is overpriced. It's oversaturated. And I think that's the biggest opportunity the Midwest has right now for startups, is that you can get a lot further on a dollar out here than you can out there.
Something I've heard Seth say before when he was in fundraising was similar point to what you just made, but also he was comparing himself to other companies in the cohort, which you were in the same batch as he was. Where are some of them on like their necessary fundraise from needing to be out there? Are they like on Series B at this point, or are most of them still at Series A?
From our cohort, I don't know of anyone who's announced a B. There's definitely several that have announced A's, and some of them announced A's shortly after ending the program. So they could be on B, and I may not just be aware of it. But also I feel like a lot of our cohort isn't necessarily in the Bay Area anymore either. For instance, one of the guys who just announced their A sales huddle, those guys are actually in New York and New Jersey. Off the top of my head, I really don't know too many guys who actually stayed out in the Bay much longer after the program ended. I feel like a lot of them but 500 is known for recruiting companies from all over the world. So we had founders from Thailand and Japan and India and all over the place. A lot of them actually went to Toronto. Interesting. One of the companies who was looking to stay in the States, they decided Toronto was a better fit for them. And they moved out there. I think there's like 3 of our cohorts who are in Toronto right now, interestingly. No, it's not quite the Midwest, but they're close.
It's only a 5-hour drive from Cleveland. No big deal.
Yeah.
So how did you become aware of 500 startups? I'm thinking guys who started a lawn care business in high school, normally the trend isn't for them to get into tech, and normally it's not necessarily for them to learn about, startup accelerators. So what was your intro to 500, and what was the thinking behind this is something we should do? So
we had launched the platform it was May 11th, 2015. It was completely bootstrapped. We hadn't raised any money. We were only iOS. We were only in 12 zip codes at the time in Michigan. That first year, a lot of our supply was being self-fulfilled by our existing business. It was about halfway through the summer that we started bringing on third-party providers. And so we were like, hey, if we're gonna grow this, it is going to require some capital in terms of the provider acquisition costs, building out the rest of the platform, because we didn't have an Android solution. And it happened that most of our service providers, or most of the guys who were looking at coming on the platform at that time, were on Android devices. We had been dumping in nominal. It was somewhere around like $5,000 in marketing or something, just out of our own pockets, just kind of experimenting with early channels. So we knew that we needed to raise money, and we applied to YC, we applied to 500. We were going through what was called Accelerate Michigan Business Competition, which is a big kind of fundraising event out here in Detroit. And yeah, we got a call back from 500, and we went through the interview process, and it was like, a week before the program started. And literally 1 week before, they called us back and they said, yeah, you guys are in. And so we had an existing business and we had 35 employees in Michigan. And we were like, you know what, we got to pack up and move out to San Francisco, and we got to do this in a week. So that was crazy. Brandon and I drove straight from Michigan to San Francisco nonstop. It was 36 hours straight. And it was brutal. We got there, we were exhausted, and then the program started like 2 days later. And wow. It was just a whirlwind. Yeah.
You didn't even get to stop anywhere in between?
We didn't stop once. We didn't take a sink. I mean, we stopped to fill up with gas, and that was it. It was just straight through. Wow. It was brutal.
That's unbelievable. How do you transition away from a 35-person company? What type of direction did you give as the owner there for them to keep things going smoothly?
We had to trust our employees. I mean, we're really fortunate in the sense that we have great employees here, and we knew the guys who could lead the company, and we put them in position to lead and said, hey, this is your responsibility. And they were excited and eager to step up, and they did an awesome job. And yeah, I was just trusting our guys.
So you just mentioned Accelerate Michigan, and we were talking a little bit about some of the benefits of being in the Midwest, including the fact that the costs are lower. We actually have lawns here, so that's good for you guys. But one thing that a lot of venture capitalists and people in the space talk about around the Midwest is the ecosystems that are developing. So Columbus is really big on ecosystem. Cincinnati, I know, is really big on ecosystem. What's the ecosystem like in Ann Arbor, and is it how tied is it to Detroit? And what's that ecosystem like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd say both Ann Arbor and Detroit have amazing ecosystems and developing ecosystems right now. And there's a couple people who are working really hard to kind of bridge those two ecosystems and bring them together. Right now, they do kind of operate independently of one another. The one in Ann Arbor that we participate in is called Spark, Ann Arbor Spark. And it's just amazing. I mean, these guys have given us grant money that we've been able to put towards marketing. That's how we paid to bring on this marketing consulting firm. And so that was, we earned $40,000 dilution-free money. They also gave us an additional $10,000 that we could use towards legal fees, relocating expenses into Ann Arbor. They brought us into Ann Arbor. So it's just been Ann Arbor Spark and the people over there. It's an open door. Anything that you need, you ask for, and they do everything they can to kind of bring it to them. So they're really focused on bringing startups into Ann Arbor and helping the startups that they get here. In Detroit, there's similar programs. Dan Gilbert's leading his whole ecosystem over there is, introducing some really, really awesome things. There's also this kind of co-working space called Bamboo, where Amanda, she's running Bamboo, and she's doing a great job in terms of bringing collaborative workspace and hosting tech-related events and kind of building up her own little, I shouldn't even say little, it's getting huge now, but her own accelerator-ish co-working type space where she's hosting awesome talks and events and everything every night. So it's great.
What type of role has mentorship played in your life or in the life of LawnGuru? Because everything you're saying sounds like, even from hiring the marketing firm or realizing that you can apply for grants, I have to think you've had some strong mentors who have helped you identify some of these opportunities.
Yeah, and a name that I haven't dropped yet is Todd, and Todd's our advisor. We met Todd, actually, Brandon met Todd at a birthday party about a month after we had launched our app in Michigan. So his girlfriend, the girl that she was nannying, was having like her 3rd year birthday party or something. And Brandon got roped into going to this thing, and he knew nobody there, and he's just kind of sitting on the sidelines. And he bumped into this guy, and this guy happened to be Todd. And Todd's a serial entrepreneur. He's had a number of businesses over the years, exited several of them successfully. And they just got to get talking, and Brandon showed him the app, and Todd was like, this is an amazing idea. Like, I want to help you guys in any way that I can. And he started mentoring us back in, the summer of 2015. He's actually the one who introduced us to the Accelerate Michigan program, where that was we took second place in 2015 there. And that was a $25,000 dilution-free check. And Todd helped us with our pitch and putting together materials and really guiding us through that whole process. So yeah, over the years, we've had awesome mentors, and Todd's been one of the most significant and beneficial to us. Absolutely.
That's great. I'm a big believer in the power of mentorship, and it's just obvious hearing from you and the way you approach things that you have some maturity in understanding beyond your years. And so I usually attribute that to some strong mentor. Of course, there was a chance you could have been like, nope, learned it all myself. And I wouldn't be having this monologue, but there's that.
You got that psych and neuroscience degree. It's just,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Actually, I'd love to dig into that. So why neuroscience?
I don't have a good reason why. I thought it was just incredibly interesting while I was going there. So I started off in the psych program, and my favorite classes. So in high school, I loved biology classes. I've always just wanted to understand how things work. I've always been taking things apart and just seeing the inner workings of them. And so trying to understand how the brain works and how memories are formed and how understanding speech and cognition and all these things actually work is what I was drawn to. I also realized my senior year that there's no way I could go through 30 years of school to actually, apply this to anything in a professional manner. And I was really more just chasing okay, how does this work? I want to learn more. But I reached a point where I was like, I love business. I was working for this small business called, well, it wasn't a small business anymore, but it was this company in Boulder called Rocky Mounts, which made products for vehicles to carry outdoor equipment. So bikes and skis and snowboards and that sort of stuff. And I was working with these guys, and it was a small operation. At the time when I joined, there was like 3 of us. This was during the 2008 kind of crash. And so the team had gotten really small, and it was just me, the founder, and one other guy. And over the next 4 years, we grew this into a team of, I think when I left, there was 12 or 15 employees, but I'd just been involved in so many aspects of the business, from prototyping and working with prototypes that were coming from China and stress testing them, and, making design and recommendations and working with the engineers and doing customer service and just all these things. And I just had fallen in love with business. And that's when I realized I'm not going to do anything with psych or neuroscience. It's just not in my professional, outlook, but business definitely is.
In a way, though, you kind of are doing something with psych if you think about it from a behavioral psychology standpoint, with all of the A/B testing you're doing in marketing and tinkering and optimizing. I mean, you're really learning about humans indirectly, which is kind of fascinating that it comes full circle.
Yeah, and like I said, the scientific approach to what we do, where it's about experimenting and really measuring and basing your decisions off the best outcomes of those experiments.
My last question, Skye. Obviously, growing and going deeper in markets and expanding to more markets is a challenge in and of itself. But what are the challenges facing your business now, or you as a founder, whether it's marketplace challenges, geographical challenges? What's holding you guys back?
I'd say the biggest challenge we faced was last year when we went into 6 new markets all at once. And looking back, I wish that we hadn't done it all at once. I wish that last year we said, okay, let's tackle 3. But we looked at this opportunity, and I think we were maybe a little optimistic in what we were capable of doing, and we said, hey, we're gonna launch 6. And it was a real battle to do 6 simultaneous markets all at once. And so we've kind of gotten over that, and now we're at a really exciting point because we've overcome all the major challenges, and now all these markets are really ripe to grow. And so this year we're really excited about just doubling down on all our existing markets and kind of blowing these ones up. When it comes time to start launching new markets, I think we've learned a lot. It's still going to be a challenge. Every marketplace, opening a new marketplace always is. And that's going to be the biggest challenge, is the opening new markets down the road. But from everything that we've learned, I think we can do it a lot better, and I'm excited to start doing it again.
That's all I got, Eric. You got any last questions?
No, that was awesome. That was a really eye-opening interview.
I guess the last question would be, is there anything that we're not asking that we should be asking?
Not asking that you should be asking. I think you guys did a good job. I mean, I feel like we covered all the major bases there. Yeah.
That's the question where I just seek validation, so thank you.
No,
that's really all Jay does. So.
All right, Skye. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time. Excited to see the future for LawnGuru this year.
Awesome. I appreciate the time, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Cool. All right, Eric, we just spoke with Skye Durrant of LawnGuru. What did you think?
Well, we had our first genital joke, so that was nice. I'm not letting that get cut. Are you kidding me?
I just keep trying to sweep it under the rug, and you're like, no, let's embrace it. Let's embrace.
Yeah, we can embrace it.
The cack and balls joke.
Sometimes. We're gonna have a couple of those, so why not just embrace it? No, but the interview itself was was awesome. You can tell that Skye and his co-founder really have down the things that matter to their business and how to grow that business, and they are focusing with laser attention on those things. And it's the 7 markets that they're in, that they've got a foothold in, and then it's really a intense focus on SEO, Instagram, Facebook, all that marketing to get new customers in at the lowest cost possible. So they're really trying to optimize. What did you think?
Yeah, what's really fun for me is when we talk to some of these founders who know their stuff so thoroughly that we end up asking 2 or 3 times as many questions, but just because they're like, yep, I got this answer, it's on the ready, and I'm going to give it to you economically. So I'm down here looking at like, okay, well, we've got an hour here. Let's keep going. And Skye was one of those guys. He knows their industry. He knows their market. He knows their product. He knows what they need to do. He's at kind of one of those points where it's in pure execution mode. You know, they've honed things in. They've had some challenges as they've expanded, and getting through those challenges, they've come out the other side with a playbook of how they want to expand, and they seem to be in a pretty good spot. But before we get too far into this, Eric, what does this last segment of our show look like?
Yeah, so this is the deal memo that we referenced in the upfront, and a deal memo serves to let LPs know what you're thinking about a certain investment that you are either about to make or not about to make, and crystallize your thinking to your investors. Now, Jay and I don't have any investors. We are just running a podcast. So this is a hypothetical, verbal, very informal deal memo. Nonetheless, we want to think about 4 specific questions as we're walking through this. Jay, did I miss anything before I dive into the 4 questions?
Only that this is intended to make us smarter. You said crystallize our thinking, which is absolutely correct. We want this to help calibrate our instincts and the way we evaluate companies and opportunities over a period of time. So we'll look back at these deal memos 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, check in on these companies, see how they're progressing as compared to our thoughts, and start to get a better sense for what we're looking at this early stage, which is, a tough stage to evaluate. So on that note, the 4 questions we are going to informally address.
How committed is this founder? What are this founder's chances of success in this business and in life? What does winning look like in terms of revenue and my return? And why has this founder chosen this business? So with those 4 questions being laid out, Jay, what were some of your big picture takeaways on the positive side of things?
Skye's been in this industry and in this business for a while. This wasn't, hey, I saw Uber, this was cool, I saw a lawnmower, and I figured, why not match these things up? It was, I started a company doing lawn care with my best friend since age 6, or knew him since age 6. And as a natural evolution to our business, as we got more savvy and understood the market and understood how technology could enable our business, a natural evolution of that was this technology platform that just so happened to look like on-demand lawn mowing services. So to me, I love narratives like that. The narratives of this was just a natural evolution and technology was an accelerant and an enabler for us versus we wanted to build an app and this was the idea that we came up with, So to me, that's always a positive sign on the founder. And, that clearly answers why has the founder chosen this business. It's just been his world. It's been what he's been in for a while. I didn't get any indication that he wasn't totally bought into it. It's not sexy. And that's something that I think we like to embrace and celebrate here in the Midwest as well, is looking at some of these founders who are doing businesses that aren't sexy, but can be highly profitable businesses. So that was my first takeaway. How about you?
I love the industry makeup of this industry. It's 500,000 landscape, what's called lawn and landscape registered companies, up to 700,000 if you count all the unregistered ones. And 70% are owner operators, which means that they have an inherent time crisis. When you're an owner operator, whether it's a truck or a lawn care company or whatever it is, you are going to have time is your most valuable resource. And they are really solving a problem for these individuals who are owning and operating their own lawn and landscape companies. So I think that being essentially the back end, the marketing, the invoicing, the bill pay, anything like that, potentially equipment financing one day. Who knows, right? If they can be the back end and make an owner operator's job easier so that they can do more work or hire more people to do more work, then that's a long-term win for me.
I agree. I really like that aspect of here is the pain problem that we're solving for these owner operators who are our supply for this marketplace. And, I've talked about this before. In a marketplace, generally supply is what needs to come first, even though it's a real chicken and the egg sort of situation. The general knowledge or the generally accepted idea is that for businesses in this way, you want to start with supply. And so for him to show this very clear ROI for them of $400 up to $700 on average per week that LawnGuru is helping them make as incremental revenue in their businesses, super easy value prop to get the supply on there. Something else that really struck out to me was they are intentionally controlling that supply because they don't want to oversaturate and get to the point of diminishing returns for the suppliers on the platform, which is really interesting and economically interesting. Do you happen to watch Dirty Money on Netflix by chance, Eric? We talked about this already.
I don't, but you have referenced Dirty Money at least 3 times on this podcast now, and we've only recorded 7 episodes.
So there's a great episode of Dirty Money about the Canadian in Quebec. There's a consortium of maple syrup producers, and that existed because maple syrup was becoming commoditized and people couldn't make a living doing maple syrup. So instead they banded together and they control the supply. So it's a falsely controlled supply of maple syrup, which raises the cost, which means people can make a living on it.
Don't they have some really ominous name?
Yeah, I forget what it's called. It is ominous.
The consortium or the...
I'm not sure. Maybe we'll look it up. But it made me think of that a little bit to say if there are suppliers who are trying to get on this platform that can't get in, but they want to, I wonder what their temperament is. I wonder what their sort of attitude towards LawnGuru is, because that could be damaging if there's a lot of people who want to get on and they can no longer make the same living they were, but the people who were in the system are making a really good living. We didn't get that far, and I probably wouldn't have thought about that if it wasn't for the maple syrup industry in Quebec. But that is the thing that I would look at as, let's monitor this. Let's see if we start hearing some dissonance or some discourse between these two groups of people.
And that brings up another question, which is that we didn't ask and we probably should have, which is he said that they have less than 1% penetration rates in all of the markets that they are in from I'm guessing, we didn't ask about the basis, but I'm guessing that means 1% of lawns, 1% of properties with lawns. What do they think the maximum number of that is? Is it 30% of lawns? Is it, because there's some that they'll just never get, right? It's just, it doesn't make sense. You'll never get them. Is it 20%? Is it 10? What is that? And then that's going to max out what your max supply is. So I think that that's an interesting question that we probably, and I don't know if there's a right answer to it, but what percentage of lawns in a given area are actually professionally manicured?
Something I didn't do a great job of researching before the interview that he readily gave us this data were his competitors. Did you find any of those competitors he mentioned in your research ahead of time?
I actually found, what was it, Easy Task or Task Easy when I typed in a search, but I did not find plows and shovels and all these other ones, green field, whatever he was saying. I did not, those did not come up in my basic searching. I will say that I did not dive super deep into competitors once I found that first one, but Task Easy didn't seem like that strict of a competitor to me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking from the same standpoint that you are of if they're at 1% penetration, what is the top line actual addressable market? And with all these competitors competing for it, sounds like they're in the same markets that he is and also in other markets. How meaningful does that become if the U.S. lawn care market exceeds $100 billion by the year 2022, but they're sub 1%? What's the total cap out? Where can they really get to?
Yeah,
but
I agree. I also think that $100 billion number is a little frothy to me. Now, this is very subject to the narrative fallacy and all of that, but I think that, in my estimation, the recent growth in lawn care is probably tied to and I think if you went back far enough, is probably tied to the recent wealth that Americans feel. And right now, Americans in general have been in essentially a 8 to 9 year public bull market, which means that their savings accounts and retirement accounts look very nice. So they feel like they can probably skimp a little bit, or they can probably splurge a little bit and get their lawn care done and not have to do things like that. So 100 billion in, was that 2 years? That's a 3x number in 2 years. That just seems a little frothy to me.
4 years. I do want to say that
what was it, 2022?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was 2020. Okay, well, yeah.
He thinks about 70 billion by 2020, I believe he said, or maybe it's 2018. I do appreciate how the rise of cryptocurrencies has brought the vocabulary term frothy back to the forefront. Big fan of the word frothy and a well-placed frothy. But I agree.
Oh, yeah. Public markets people love the term frothy. It's nice. Because it doesn't say bubble. It's just like there's a lot of little bubbles, and it's like frothy, but it's not like a bubble. Because if you call it a bubble, then you know you're crazy.
Something that we routinely hear as a response from these founders, and don't often touch on in the deal memo, but I wanted to address, was his experience with some of the investors on the coast, specifically related to his business. Something he said that really struck me was, sometimes we hear that people don't understand the business, but when he said they just don't have lawns and they don't get it, to me, that's kind of oh yeah, that makes sense to me intuitively. But also, what a blind spot. It seems like you make 10 phone calls to people in the Midwest who have lawns, and you get some data from them. It just seems like if you looked at some of the traction numbers he has of thousands of services being run through the app on a weekly basis, traction should speak for itself in some ways. And I wonder if the investors are saying, I can't really add to this business because I don't understand it, and they're saying, I want my money to be smart money versus just money, or if a lack of understanding equates to a lack of capital investment.
And that's really interesting because we tend to think about a lack of understanding equating to a lack of investment from the opposite perspective, where VCs or investors on the West Coast understand something so well because it's been done out there so much that it just doesn't work the same way here, where we talk about this with consumer plays all the time. And we talked about this with Rap Chat, where it was hard to explain this thesis to people in the Midwest, but on the West Coast, they were like, yeah, we get it. So it's like, it brings up that difference in geography. And yeah, the lawn model is kind of fascinating that they just don't, it's not a thing that they do.
Getting back into the numbers a little bit, what gives me pause, or what is still interesting to me and challenging to me, is acquiring customers. I think from the supply side, the value prop is very clear to the user. We are going to make you X number of dollars of incremental revenue per week, and we're going to take away some of the administrative work from your plate. Super clear. What I assumed and what Skye kind of validated was getting in front of the end consumer isn't a hard sell once you're in front of them. But to go to a mass market is a difficult and expensive task, right? So his value propositions to the consumers was transparency, control, and convenience. And he thinks that they have data to back up. You can save 30% over the year of your outdoor services cost by pausing some of the services, not doing some of the services, which I believe. Still, it seems like it'll be a difficult and expensive task to get those customers. They need to have a incredible first experience, which it sounds like he's focused on. And it sounds like he's focused on these things exactly. It's just, that's going to take some money.
Yeah, I completely agree. They are absolutely focused on acquiring customers, and it seems like it's a no-brainer right now for any owner operator or supply side person that they could reach out to. They have backlogs in some of the cities. They have wait lists. It's really now turning into, okay, how do we get individuals and residential people on board, and how do we grow that 1% higher while keeping our customer acquisition costs low? That's the challenge right now in this business. That's the place that they have to figure out over 2018. And I think it's where the focus is, and it's why they're not expanding like crazy right now.
That being said, if the customer acquisition cost is somewhere in the neighborhood of $45, but their year-over-year retention is 90% over the last 3 to 4 years, they're recouping that customer acquisition cost, in which case, again, that should be a pretty simple model, I would think. We put $45 in, we get $20 out. That's obviously not taking into account all the other overhead that's actually probably a part of that customer acquisition cost and running a team, et cetera. But it seems like they've got a nice little engine moving there, and expansion is the big priority and the challenge ahead of them.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we didn't do well, I love critiquing us in these because it's like not part of the deal memo at all, but
it's just mostly what we do.
It's mostly critiquing us and praising them. And it's like, okay, well, great. We didn't ask about what the average revenue for one new user over the course of a year or lifetime value or something like that is, so we can get a better sense of that $45. Like if the average user that comes on their platform brings in $55, then that's a $10 margin. And sure, they're profitable from a additional user standpoint, a marginal profit. But if it's $180, then it's like, whoa, you've really like that. Everyone you bring on is really important. So you got a little bit of wiggle room in that $45 if you need to move it up a little bit more, move it down a little bit more. And then retention, from there we can calculate things like what's the payback period on that customer acquisition? Is it 2 months or is it a year and 4 months, right? That is, so we definitely missed a question there in terms of average user revenue that I think if we would have asked, we would be able to have a lot deeper insights right now.
Yep. Should have asked about that. Should have asked about the K factor on the referrals. How many referrals is a single person generating? Because that usually leads to showing what level of virality your product can have. Is how many word of mouth referrals do you get from one person, and what is that worth? I forget the exact definition or the formula for a K factor, but if it's above a certain threshold, then it means that it's going to spread without you needing to put a whole lot of effort into it. But, it seems like Uber, Lyft, Instacart, these companies that have gone and kind of written a playbook for expanding to other cities, seems like LawnGuru is taking some of the best practices that they see in companies like that. But the intentional sort of throttle down and going deeper in markets before expanding is an interesting approach. And I wonder if it's an approach driven by maybe even a little bit of conservatism, right? Because on one hand, you say, we're going to do the land grab approach. We're going to get in every market as fast as we can, and then work on going deeper. Maybe they're saying, the outcome that we're looking for is a $500 million company versus $1 billion. Maybe it's not important to them to be the biggest thing or run a company that big. Or maybe they just believe that they can actually do that approach of going market by market, do a handful a year, go really deep over that year, and then replicate it that way. Or maybe it's neither of those things, and they're saying right now we're going slower and deeper, and then we will ramp that up as we get better and more efficient at doing it.
So as we think about revenue and return, one of those 4 questions, it's a question that they obviously asked themselves, right? Because they started off with $250,000 a year with their business that they were building up. Then they went to $750,000, then $2 million, pretty much by removing inefficiencies and doing a very classic private equity roll-up strategy, which is buy smaller players, put them on the same standardized processes, use their books to expand your business, keep on going. They could have rolled that thing forward from $2 million to, probably a lot more money, right?
Certainly a lot more money, yeah.
I'm not going to put a number on it or anything, but they could have taken those processes, continued to buy out smaller owner-operators, continued to grow that business to the point where they were doing $100 million a year.
Well, they're still doing that business.
They are still doing that business, but it didn't seem like that was the private equity focus anymore. It seemed like everything, and maybe I misinterpreted this, but it seemed like they have this kind of cash flow machine over there that's subsidizing their lives and their livelihood, and is kind of like their primary. I'm guessing that they use LawnGuru on their LawnGuru, same names, by the way, which is very confusing.
Well, I think they changed it. I think they changed it over to, he was saying in 2015, they moved it over to be called Design Ventures.
Oh, okay. So maybe that business isn't growing as aggressively as it was when it went 10x in 2 years. So looking at what they're doing now in terms of ramping back a little bit, I think the bigger vision is in the billions. It's not in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions, because they had a path to that, and they made a very conscious decision to go a different way. And now they're making a very conscious decision to slow down going a different way. So it wasn't speed that was the reason they launched this. It was, this is a bigger opportunity in their eyes.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate too much on that front.
That's literally all we do in this.
You're right. It's just what we do in this segment all the time is like, here are the questions we should have asked. The beginning is here are the questions I want to ask, and then the end is like, still missed on these. Yeah, I would agree. And I guess implicit in my thought exercise that I was saying is the assumption that they have the money to go all those markets at once. That's an expensive proposition to build out that infrastructure. So it could very well be that they need to do this approach to generate the revenue possible to do that. That's very likely in something that we see in the Midwest all the time.
Yeah, putting revenue before growth, which is why, and we talk about this a lot of companies who are just starting up will have consulting arms mostly just for revenue, and so that they can continue to grow, but they launch some sort of development revenue or marketing consulting arm or whatever it is to get that cash flow so they can sustain their business, so that they can grow it. But then it takes a little longer because they're not pedal to the metal on growth. What else about Skye in particular impressed you or gave you maybe a bit of pause about either his commitment to this venture or his chances of success?
No real pause on Skye as a founder. I thought he was really impressive. If they are running design ventures and that's taking a significant amount of time, there is the question mark of split attention. You never really want split attention, but I didn't get a feeling that was difficult. And he addressed that in a way, talking about how on a drop of a hat, they moved over to California for 500 startups and let a company of 35 do its own thing. Like, I was really interested to hear, what do you as a CEO, as a founder of a company, do to let the ship run without you on the drop of a hat? And what he talked to was trust and the quality of his people. So that speaks to him as a leader, that he attracts good people and that he trains them well and that he trusts them to do their job. So to me, that was really, really telling of him as a founder. Anything that struck you?
That I took away the exact same thing, is that he can definitely lead people and empower them to run full divisions of essentially a company. And that's awesome. And it's not easy. A lot of founders end up micromanaging their firms either to death or to constriction. And it's impressive that he can do that. So I think that is awesome. I think that he knows his stuff. You can tell he's polished. Yeah, I was very impressed.
Takes an interesting and unique person to go from being an entrepreneur to saying, yep, I'm still going to do college. And not only am I going to get a degree, I'm going to get a degree in neuroscience because I'm intensely interested in it. I think that speaks to his curiosity as well as his intelligence.
With the full understanding that he might never use it again, right? Like he did that just for fun, essentially. Like he didn't even realize how it was like playing into maybe his life and his future, because he's like, no, it's just like really interesting stuff.
I think also something that stood out was the focus on marketing and the focus on marketing as an experiment and approaching it like a scientist. And not only just him, but at one point he said, I think everyone has a focus on marketing on his team, which I think again speaks to his leadership and his influence. And I think that's commendable for a business that is going to be very much dependent on a strong marketing engine for customer acquisition, which is, the drivers in their business. It's CAC and LTV.
So what are, looking forward 6 to 18 months, what are the key indicators, key things that you want to think about and see from LawnGuru?
I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's how many markets they're in, what the growth in each of those markets has looked like. Yeah. And, their customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value. I want to see if they're growing and going into a lot of markets and running a lot of transactions, but their retention drops steeply from that 90%. You want to know why, but assuming they keep that relative retention rate and start expanding, I just want to see what's the rate of their growth, what markets are they going into, how's that strategy becoming more efficient, and what are their customer acquisition strategies, and how are they performing? How about you?
I think if there were one KPI, key performance indicator that I could focus on in 6 to 18 months, it would be the CAC recovery time, because as they try to dig deeper into markets, my guess is that CAC relative to revenue per average user is going to increase. And that's just a basic kind of upside down J curve. So I would be curious to see how they're handling that and how dramatically it changes over time, or if it goes down or if it goes up, and what kind of the trend has been in their CAC recovery time. Obviously, we don't know the base question or the base rate because we didn't ask that. In 6 months, maybe we could see like a 6-month chart or something that would be really compelling to me. It's
going to be real fun 6 months from now when we start doing re-interviews or follow-up interviews with some of these founders.
Yeah, well, don't give that away, man. We got to keep something for the listeners, some sort of surprise.
Foreshadowing. You're right. All right. Well, Eric, this has been fun. Let's go about the rest of our weekends, and I'll talk to you soon. Oh, wait. Sorry. I didn't give the sign-off, did I?
No, I didn't know what you were doing. I thought we would maybe just pop back on. But we're still learning here, guys. We're still learning.
Guys, thanks for listening to the show. We'd love to hear from you. This is a conversation. We want you guys to get smarter just as we're trying to get smarter. So if you have thoughts, if you have ideas, if you have questions, tweet at us at UpsideFM or shoot us an email, hello@upside.fm. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to make this a conversation. If you love our show, please review the show on iTunes. Give it a 5-star, preferably. Say something nice. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you about what we can do to improve the show. But your ratings and reviews help us to continue to bring high-quality guests to the show. Am I missing anything?
And if you want to say anything mean, just say it to Jay on Twitter. Don't say it on iTunes. That'd be cool.
Yes, tweet at Jay Klaus or at EK Hornung and say the mean things there.
Later.
See you guys. That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's guest, so shoot us an email at hello@upside.fm or find us on Twitter at UpsideFM. We'll be back here next week at the same time talking to another founder in our quest to find upside outside of Silicon Valley. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please email us or find us on Twitter and let us know. And if you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes. That goes a long way in helping us spread the word and continue to help bring high-quality guests to the show. Eric and I decided there were a couple things we wanted to share with you at the end of the podcast, and so here we go. Eric Hornung and Jay Klaus are the founding parties of the Upside Podcast. At the time of this recording, we do not own equity or other financial interest in the companies which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinion and do not reflect the opinions of Duff & Phelps LLC and its affiliates, Unreal Collective LLC and its affiliates, or any entity which employ us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. We have not considered your specific financial situation nor provided any investment advice on this show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Never mind, bro, that can't be matched. I'm like